It is officially now game week, and the Florida State Seminoles are facing off against Alabama on Saturday at 3:30 p.m. in a newly renovated Doak Campbell Stadium. With me this evening is Dustin, our lead basketball writer at NoleGameday.com, and over to the other side is Dustin Lewis, our editor-in-chief. And gentlemen, ladies, everybody with us live, we have officially made it. We've had a long offseason, and really honestly started back in the late September of 2024 because Florida State did not have a season and don't even want to think about that season. We're not even going to bring up that season as much on this show as we're going to be previewing Florida State versus Alabama. We've got tons of injury updates. We heard from Mike Norvell today. We heard from Daryl Jackson. We've heard from Squirrel White as well this week. And we are going to jump into 3 ways that Florida State can beat the Alabama Crimson Tide and pull off a massive upset and shocker to begin the college football season. And then at the very end, we will be giving our score predictions for what should hopefully be a fun and rowdy game inside Doak Campbell Stadium. Gentlemen, we're here. I'm going to be heading up to Tallahassee tomorrow. Dustin's been amped. He's been around the campus. He's been at not at practices, but at the post-practice interviews, and have been hearing from all these guys in VZ's and Carolina. So here we are. How are we feeling, gentlemen?
It's great to be back. We've been waiting on this episode for a long time. And like you said, the offseason trudged along. But, I mean, man, August 30th, right around the corner. You have this new look Florida State team that's made so many changes to its roster and coaching staff, going up against an Alabama team that brings back a ton of experience, but is starting a new quarterback who hasn't even thrown a touchdown in a game during his 3 years at the college level. A lot of things going on both sides going into this one. It should be a fun battle between these two to open the 2025 season in a renovated Doak Campbell Stadium. So it should be a fun afternoon.
It's that time of the year where I'm no longer just the basketball guy. I'm also the game preview guy.
Yep.
So take that for what it is. I'm jealous of the people that'll be there. It's going to be an awesome atmosphere. I'm expecting it to be a lot like that Notre Dame game was 4 years ago, hopefully with a better outcome. But I'm expecting a very rowdy and passionate fan base, and I think the newly renovated Doak Campbell Stadium is going to bring a little extra juice.
I think it will too, gentlemen. Did y'all see that video today that was posted?
Very cool.
From the Seminoles, a cool drone shot that kind of
was my
immersive view of what it's going to look like.
That was my first thought. Was great drone work, phenomenal drone work.
I wonder how much they paid that dude, and whoever did it could be lady too as well. But just going through and showing Doak, also too, a little glimpse of the football only facility, the new practice fields as well. This not only this football team trying to bounce back, but also to a lot of upgrades across the football program. And man, it was a beautiful video from them and kind of got you amped up. Also saw like Mike Norvell featured in there from his office view looking at Doak. So really well done video there. And it only is just kind of building up some more hype closer to Saturday, which right now weather's looking pretty up and down. Some days it's looking like, okay, you're not going to have rain, you're not going to storm. And then today, right now, as we speak, it's looking like there could be some thunderstorms, your regular August type of weather. Although it is showing, around the 80, 85 degrees. All FSU fans, Alabama fans included as well, would love for that. Definitely in the heart of August and summertime, you'll take 85 degrees. But you just got to watch out for weather, and I'll take on rain. That'll be fine. But lightning delays is something that nobody wants at all. Even with the new renovations, it allows you some more time to go grab some drinks, grab some food and such. But I can go and tell you there's too much excitement for this game and anticipation to what is going to be the 2025 Seminoles. What is that going to look like? What is Mike Norvell going to do? What has he done with these new coordinators, the new coaching staff, a whole new roster flipped, whole tons of new additions? What is that going to look on the field? And the more that we wait for that, man, you just start itching. We're getting so close to it. So please, no lightning delays. We need that magnet to come in clutch for us. That might be one of my biggest takeaways going into the game. We need the magnet to come in, D-Lou.
Yeah, I will say, it's been raining a little bit more than normal around here lately. And, Mike Norvell talked about it, the potential of weather impacting this game. And he said, the team had some chances to prepare for this. They had to go through lightning delays down there when they were in Jacksonville practicing at UNF. So, I mean, they're prepared for these scenarios. But either way, I mean, no one wants to see weather make an impact on the game. And as it sits, I mean, I'm looking at my weather app, and it's giving me a 25% chance of rain at 3, 2, and then it jumps up to 30 at 6 o'clock. So maybe a little bit of rain. It's projecting half an inch on the day, so it doesn't seem like it should be too bad. And like you said, Logan, I mean, overall, the weather, I think it's looking a little bit nicer. As far as the the temperature, it's looking probably a little bit nicer than people would expect here in Tallahassee, late August, early September. I mean, a high of 85, that's as good as you're going to get going into a football game on a Saturday in Tally.
Yep. Yeah, so looking forward to being up there in Doak. Won't be up there in the press box with you, D-Lou. And, I was like, oh, man, okay, worst case scenario, I sit back, I can crank open a couple brewskis, watch the game, take down the notes, get onto the instant reaction with VZ afterward.
Very professional.
Yeah, very professional is how we do it at NoleGameday.com. But I did see Joe Tessitore is going to be calling the game. I said, absolutely hell no. He's going to suck off the SEC for too much. I can't do it. I got to make it to the stadium. I can't listen to it. So luckily found a way in. Shout out to the Lewis family for that. But I can't stand Joe Tessitore. He did enough of gargling up the SEC the last few seasons. And Jesse Palmer's on the call. He's not bad as well. If only he could be calling it, that would be great. But looking forward to being in there, Doak. And we will have an instant reaction after this game. But let's go and get started. Let's start talking about some of the notes that we've taken down over this last week. Honestly, there's been so much, news coming out of Tallahassee, but also too really more from Tuscaloosa on their side. Let's start off with some of their injuries. And there was some breaking news earlier today, and we'll start with that, gentlemen. Redshirt junior defensive lineman Tim Keenan suffered an injury earlier this week on Tuesday, and he is going to miss this game, including other games, but more importantly, this on Saturday. He's going to go through a tightrope surgery, which I don't know what that is. I don't understand what a tightrope surgery is. I should have.
It's basically like for a bad high ankle sprain type deal. I think it's what Brock Bowers had, right?
Here's the exact definition provided by Google. A minimally invasive procedure used to stabilize a high ankle sprain by using a braided cord and 2 metal buttons to hold the tibia and fibula bones together. That is what is happening.
Wow. That to me would feel a little bit more that he'd miss more games. But that's it's certainly hurtful for the Crimson Tide. Last season, he recorded 40 tackles, including 7.5 tackles for loss, 2.5 sacks. What's funny here, VZ, this is the kind of talent that Alabama's losing on Saturday. Todd McShay has him listed as a first rounder and projected to go to the Minnesota Vikings in the first round with the number 18th pick in his early mock draft. This guy is a stud. I don't know his height, but I believe he's at 326 pounds, absolute unit of a defensive lineman, one of their captains as well, and also represented Alabama up there at SEC Media Days. What's y'all's initial reaction to this and how this can impact Florida State?
It's a really big loss for Alabama. I mean, you just kind of said it. One of their most experienced players on defense, a guy who's very highly regarded amongst the coaching staff in the locker room to earn team captain honors, and someone who's been very reliable for them over the last couple of seasons. Last year, you went over his stats, had a career season for Alabama, and I mean, seemed primed to continue to be a key figure right there in the middle of the trenches for the Crimson Tide defense. And I mean, losing him, it's going to be interesting to see who steps into his place. They got some guys behind him in the lineup, redshirt sophomore Edric Hill, redshirt freshman Jeremiah Beeman. Both of those guys are more of reserves for the Crimson Tide a year ago. And I do wonder, if maybe they experiment a little bit with their defensive ends and, shift their defensive tackle down to nose, maybe play Kelby Collins inside, a guy who's new to the Alabama program. So there's some different ways for him to go. This is definitely a big loss, but Alabama also has a ton of experience and talent along that front seven.
Yes, you already mentioned the size, 6'2", 320. He's also second on the team returning in quarterback pressures and quarterback hits, or quarterback hurries, I should say. Just a guy that you wouldn't think of him as your natural pass rusher, just given 2.5 sacks, but he's been productive in the middle of that defensive line, and it's absolutely a big loss. I mean, that's a huge man that they're going to be missing, and it's a defense that really prides themselves on stopping the run, and without him, it's going to be big. And Florida State's going to want to run the football as well, and they're going to have a better chance without Keenan in that lineup.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think immediately and I was saying his last name wrong. We should be saying, I guess, Luke Pettibone on here for Florida State's new center from Wake Forest, who transferred over, who I'm very high on. Everybody knows this from this offseason. We've talked about him a lot, but like you were saying, gentlemen, they want to run the ball and shoot. If we do get a little bit of some rain, whatever, it's going to come down to who wants to play harder on the ground. We've heard from Herb Hand, Florida State's offensive lines coach, and he feels like this team wants to push. This unit wants to push. That has been the number one thing that he's put into place since arriving, is that you are going to play physical, because with Gus Malzahn's offense, they want to run the ball, and that's something that lacked in such a bad way last year. Just completely fell off for Florida State and didn't allow them to do much of anything on the air because there was no threat with the run game. So yeah, this is a significant loss. But like you said though, D-Lou, I mean, this Alabama team, you're just going to look at another 4-star or potential 5-star. That's just kind of how. And he's up next. So you can't go into the mentality like, oh my goodness, all right, they just lost, one of their top defensive linemen. Oh, everything's all good. Everything's all rainbows and everything. No. That can't be the case for you. And Alabama will make sure that they have a player ready to step up. But this is someone of their biggest leaders, not only just defense, but overall on the team, as being a captain for them. Now, there is another injury too that keep an eye on, one that we'll be monitoring going into the game itself. Kalen DeBoer has been mentioning this a little bit, talking about Jaden Roberts, who's Alabama's redshirt junior right guard. He's been limited so far in camp. He's very slowly progressing, but this seems to be like a game time decision for him. They've been shuffling around some guys to prepare for him not to be available for this game. But that's someone on the trenches on the other side for the Crimson Tide that they might not have against the Seminoles on Saturday afternoon.
Yeah, and I mean, another loss for Alabama in the trenches. Jaden Roberts, a starter there at right guard in 2024, and he's dealing with a concussion, still in that protocol. Kalen DeBoer talked about his status a little bit today, and he's made a little bit of progress, it seems, but not enough for the Crimson Tide to fully deem him available to play on Saturday. So, I mean, it seems like right now it's trending as if he won't play. And I mean, if that's the case, Alabama, we talk about the loss that they had along the defensive line and Tim Keenan, but now you're going to have 3 new starters potentially along that offensive line, both your guard spots and also at right tackle. They do have Caden Proctor and Parker Brailsford back, but outside of that, going to be breaking in some new guys in a hostile Doak Campbell Stadium.
Yeah, Jaden Roberts played more than 500 snaps last year, only allowed 1 sack, did allow 11 pressures. That's going to be the interesting part. I expect a lot of Darrell Jackson to be lining up against whoever is his backup if he doesn't go. And even if he does go, 11 pressures is a lot for a guard. I would expect Florida State to really try and take advantage of that. If they can, we'll have to see how this defensive line comes out and plays, especially with Kevin Wynn not being able to go. But definitely going to be, like Dustin mentioned, if they have to replace 3 starters for this game, that's just naturally tough. It is.
Mm-hmm. Not going to be easy. I'll talk about it later on here, and it's in one of my takeaways, but interested to see how Tony White is going to instrument a lot of things in the trenches for Florida State, because I think that's where they're lacking, at least depth-wise, primarily. I'm going to discuss that a little bit more later on in this show. Let's talk about another one. We've mentioned this one a few times. We've known about this for a little bit, but it is worth mentioning now as we are previewing the game. Jam Miller, Alabama's starting running back, will miss this game in 2024. He had 145 carries, 668 yards, and had 7 touchdowns. He averaged 4.6 yards per carry, and this is a significant loss for them there for the Crimson Tide. What are y'all's thoughts on that? Because they're also bringing in Ty Simpson, which we're going to talk about later on as well heavily. But, this is a lot of and it's the first game of the season. This is where you start getting into some thoughts and some things when you're going on long walks like I did last night and think, what are some ways Florida State can pull this one out? It is a first game, right, Logan? It's first game. Everything's up for grab. You never know what could happen. Well, when you look at these kind of injuries that Alabama is suffering here, and wondering where can Florida State take advantage of, this is certainly one of them. Not that it's going to be an absolute game changer, but there's a lot of newcomers that are going to get some big time roles for Alabama as well in this game.
No, I think these are some huge losses for Alabama, and we talk about potentially having 3 new guys on the offensive line, and then you lose your starting running back who led the running backs in rushing yards a season ago. And also with that, this offseason, Alabama had Justice Haynes transfer out to Michigan. So there's really not a lot of experience returning in that backfield. And you look at the guys behind Jam Miller, redshirt sophomore Richard Young, he's got 36 career carries, 5.4 yards per carry last season. Sophomore Daniel Hill has 21 carries. They were able to bring in Louisiana transfer Dre Washington, and he's got 229 carries to his name, but it seems like he's mostly been running as a second or third running back so far. Those are probably the 3 guys you're going to see the most for Alabama. So they're not exactly proven, and you've got question marks about how these guys along the offensive line are going to assimilate. So, if Alabama can't effectively run the football against Florida State, and you make Ty Simpson have to beat the Seminoles, who, like we talked about, has only thrown 50 passes, hasn't thrown a touchdown in a game, doesn't really have a ton of experience playing against Power 4 competition, it makes it a lot tougher on this guy in his very first start at the college level.
Yeah, this is where having one of my best friends from back home being an Alabama fan really helps. Because like, hey, what's going on with these backup running backs? He's like, I liked Richard Young more than I like Jam Miller, which is a crazy statement. But he's a big fan of Richard Young. I think he's going to get a lot of carries. And you just mentioned he averaged almost 5.5 yards per carry last year, a couple touchdowns as well. I think he's a good player. And granted, everybody from Alabama is going to have high pedigree, high expectations. Another former 4-star running back in that room. I think he's going to be just fine. I'm not going to be too worried about their rushing attack because that's just who Alabama is. I won't say always. For the majority of the last 20 years, they've been a great running team. They've always been able to find a way to stabilize that rushing room, and they did that last year with Kalen DeBoer as well as with their head coach. So I'm not too worried about them missing Jam Miller. Obviously, it's going to be big, but when you mix that and the offensive line and all the pieces that they're good Lord, mixing in there, I'm just losing it. Yeah,
you're just excited for Saturday. Just be honest, VZ.
Excited to stretch. No, with all the pieces they're mixing in there on the offensive line, I'm not. I should be more worried than I am, but I'm really not. I think they're going to figure out a way to still have some success on the ground.
And he had those 5.5 or 5.4 yards per carry, but I mean, only 36 attempts. So there's not a lot of proven production there. And most of that was in backup action for Alabama. So we'll see, if he is able to take that next step as a starter for Alabama going up against first team defense that Florida State's throwing out there that, should provide plenty of pressure and physicality out there and trying to get after this Alabama running game.
And I think part of it is I think Ty Simpson's going to be a little bit more mobile than I think people would normally expect. Even he averaged 5.5 yards per carry. He didn't obviously have a ton of opportunities last year, but he had 8 carries for 44 yards or something like that last season for the Tide. I think he's going to catch Florida State's defense off guard just a couple times where they think they have things locked up in coverage and he just takes off for 7 yards. I think that's just going to happen a few times, and that's going to help alleviate that run game.
Yeah, I spent time today watching film on Ty Simpson. That boy can run. He's actually pretty damn fast too. And that's I don't need to tell what Tony White to do. He's the damn DC, but I'm sure he's seen the same thing. That boy can run. And when things kind of fall apart in the pocket, he's not the easiest to take down as well. I saw a film where defensive linemen's all over him, draped around him, and he still gets out of that potential tackle there. He's a guy that will run the ball if need be.
He's an athlete, he can get it done with his legs, 22 carries, 130 yards, 3 touchdowns in his career at Alabama. But, he had 78 of those yards came on one run against, I think, Western Carolina or an FCS team that they played. And you boil it down to Power 4 opponents. And, he's been going up against backup defenses in relief of
garbage time.
Jalen Milroe and those guys over the years. 6 carries for 6 yards. His 3 touchdowns, a 1-yard rush against Middle Tennessee State, a 1-yard rush against USF. He did have a 15-yard touchdown against Western Kentucky. But I wonder, if the legs are not as what they're being advertised to be. We'll see how it plays out. I know Florida State, they're going to be prepared for it. They've obviously watched a lot of film on this guy, what is available, and we'll see how it goes. But Ty Simpson making his first start in Doak Campbell Stadium, I think the most important thing for Alabama is you need to get him off to a fast start so that he's confident in himself. If Florida State comes out and forces a 3-and-out or 2 3-and-outs, how is Ty Simpson going to be feeling over there on the sideline?
Mm-hmm. Wouldn't it be nice, Daryl Jackson, 3rd down sack on the first drive? Wouldn't that be nice? That would get Doak Campbell Stadium absolutely rocking. Let's go over to Florida State's side real quick before we go to our 3 ways Florida State can take down the Tide. Squirrel White, talking to the media this week, he told everybody that he feels 100%. He feels right and ready to go for this game on Saturday. And then also, too, Mike Norvell talked to the media. He said he's been looking good. And Mike Norvell felt very confident. It felt like, from my takeaways, very energetic Mike Norvell today and this press conference. And, I do think that, yes, it is game week, so that's going to help you a good bit. But it gives you a good sign that, the coach feels good about where his team is at going into the game in a few days. But Squirrel White being full go is talk about mandatory. I mean, you've got to have that because they're starting wide receivers, Deuce Robinson, then you got a true freshman in there with Javon Boggs. But to help you out on offense on Saturday afternoon is going to be Squirrel White. He was a menace to Alabama not too long ago for Tennessee, and he's a playmaker. He can run really fast, obviously, but I think he's going to be somebody that is going to help create a threat and open up routes for also Deuce Robinson. But someone that I'm very highly on, which we'll talk about here in a minute, who Mike Norvell raved about, is Randy Pittman, the UCF transfer wide receiver, gentlemen.
Yeah, that's the guy.
Tight end, my bad.
Yeah, that's the guy Florida State needs in Squirrel White. I mean, he's your most experienced skill player. He's a proven threat with what he was able to do over his 3 seasons at Tennessee. And I mean, being ranked 7th in career receptions for Tennessee just really shows his talent and consistency over the years. He's been banged up throughout the offseason, obviously caught this injury here in the latter half of fall camp. And it's really huge for this Florida State offense to get him back into the fold right here before Alabama, because like you said, Logan, I mean, you're really relying on him and Deuce Robinson to lift this room up while the rest of these guys gain game experience and continue to grow. It should be fun to see Boggs out there, but you certainly want your proven guys in Deuce and Squirrel who what they bring to the table.
We've talked about a lot this offseason where there's just not much experience out wide. And if you didn't have Squirrel for this game, you're looking at the rest of the depth chart going, man, who can we throw the ball to? Really? Yeah. Having him out there is going to be huge. I think they're going to use him in other ways just outside of quick passing game and even deep shots. I wouldn't be surprised to see him get an end around at some point in this game just to give him the ball in space, because they're going to have to find ways to get creative against this defense for sure.
Mm-hmm. Before we keep going here, if you're enjoying the content, smack the like button down below. And if you're new here, hit that subscribe button. We've got a lot of content coming for you guys this year. We practically doubled down here, at least on the YouTube side of things. Also, too, you guys get our live streams on Facebook as well. But YouTube gets all of the pressers. We'll have instant reactions from Mike Norvell after the Alabama game. And then also, too, me and VZ will be live right after the game as soon as possible to get our biggest takeaways as well. But you hitting that like button and also subscribing just helps us get it out to more FSU fans here with us. But let's keep on moving on here, gentlemen. Let's jump over to what Kalen DeBoer had to say real quick. He spoke this week about the game specifically and actually noted on Mike Norvell and talking about the coaching staff in Tallahassee. Here's what he had to say. He said, I know that from the coaching staff, Coach Norvell, 2 new coordinators, it's been a lot of film for us to pour through. They've done a great job over their careers individually and now collectively, and we're going to face a good test here this weekend. He also talked about going into Doak Campbell Stadium, how hostile that is going to be. The war chant's going to be blaring. The marching Chiefs always bring it at 110%. This is what he had to say about playing in a sold-out Doak Campbell Stadium. He said, you've got to have a fast start. If you dig yourself into a hole on the road, it gets hard. The crowd gets behind the home team, and that comes down to execution, which comes down to preparation and the work that happens on the football field tomorrow, Wednesday, and Thursday. So it's the same old thing. So it's about starting fast, and not that you don't have the belief, but another level of momentum. and as much as anything, taking it away from them, especially in an environment that we know is going to be a good one down there in Tallahassee. Thoughts on what DeBoer had to say in these comments here? He's definitely pointing out that, they had to look a lot into the film with having two new coordinators coming in. And also, too, this is going to be a stadium with a lot of noise. And we were talking about Ty Simpson and a lot of these other new starters for Bama. It's going to be a pretty good test for them early on in this game, certainly if they can't get off to a good start.
I think these are really two of the biggest things going in Florida State's favor. I mean, not only having the home crowd behind you, which it should be rocking, with all the changes made to Doak Campbell Stadium and some excitement building with what Florida State has done with its coaching staff and switching up the roster. And I mean, just getting a chance to host Alabama in Tallahassee, so it's going to be rocking in there. And then with all of the changes and, us talking about, we don't know exactly what Florida State's going to look like out there on the field. Alabama doesn't either. I mean, They know these guys coming in. They don't know exactly how they're going to fit into what Gus Malzahn wants to do or what Tony White wants to do. And I think, that secrecy is a big advantage for Florida State. There's no tape on what this team looks like. They can go out there and do some really unorthodox things to confuse Alabama in this game. It's not going to confuse or not surprise me if they have a couple of tricks up their sleeve to get that Crimson Tide defense caught off guard.
Yeah, why not?
Right. Yeah, they're probably like the rest of us. They saw Florida State release the depth chart and goes, "Who the hell is Donnie Hybert?"
Hebert, baby, come on, got to get it right.
Sorry.
Come on, Hebert, baby, got to give the respect to him now. Too deep.
But I do agree with DeBoer about both teams are going to want a fast start in this game for sure. Florida State's going to make a point saying, "Hey, this is a new offense. This isn't going to be like last year where we struggled to score 10 points in a game. We've got an offense now." But at the same time, Alabama's like, "Yeah, we've got a new quarterback, but we've got two amazing receivers in Ryan Williams and Jeremy Bernard. We want to take advantage of that." We'll see if either team can get off to a fast start depending on how the weather shakes out. But that's absolutely what both teams are going to want to do is they're going to want to go out and try and get up to a 10-0 start at minimum.
I mean, why not throw anything at Alabama? Why not? I mean, this is going to be a big conversation too, I think, in our probably next week is, recapping the Alabama game and seeing what Gus Malzahn did, Tony White, and also too, they're both going to get a good feeling about the personnel that they got out there. But there is a long season ahead. This isn't just on one game specifically for Florida State. So do whatever you want here and try different things and take those shots and, of course, be safe and understand whatever Alabama's giving you, be very smart and your assignments. But to me, throw it all out there. Give it a shot. I think we'll see a lot of Thomas Castellanos running around as he should be. This is why he came to Florida State. There's a reason why things did not work out in Boston College with Bill O'Brien. He is not a pocket passer. This young man is going to be running around a lot on Saturday afternoon and throughout this entirety of the season. And that's something that this staff from Alabama has been preparing for a lot. But there's going to be different things that we definitely didn't see last year, but that's the one case that it's hard to kind of prepare for a guy like Thomas Castellanos. I believe Alabama's DC most recently spoke on him as well. I'll try to find those quotes there. But he pressed on, man, this is not an easy guy to prep for just because of what Thomas Castellanos can do with his wheels, his vision. He runs like a running back, but also too, not saying that he's a threat immensely at throwing the ball. We know that that's not going to be the case this upcoming season, but he is still a dual threat guy and he can throw the ball. You just got to hope that he's improved as a passer, because if Thomas Castellanos has improved as a passer, man, that improves this offense and can take it to a different level. It's just we'll see, and we didn't really hear that primarily during camp as much, but he could prove it to us differently once we get into the season.
Yeah, I just think it unlocks a different level of Florida State's offense when they actually have a guy back there who's a dual threat who the other defense has to account for. And I mean, not only does it allow Tommy Castellanos to make plays, but it really opens things up for the running backs and for the RPO game to start clicking. And, I think Florida State with Gus Malzahn coming in, what he's done over the last couple of years as far as producing rushing attacks, 3 consecutive seasons with a top 10 rushing offense in the FBS, over 220 plus yards per game during his last season at UCF. I mean, we know they're going to do different things to find success on the ground, whether that's utilizing the running backs or jet sweeps, or it's not going to surprise me if we see some wildcat and some different things of misdirection to try and, like I said before, catch this Alabama defense off guard, which, that defensive line, that front seven for the Crimson Tide, they're very aggressive, very physical, trying to get into that backfield to create negative plays. On the flip side, Florida State, they've got to take that aggressiveness, use it to their advantage in the screen game and other things to get those guys behind the line and be able to create explosive plays on offense. So it's going to be a fun mix and match between Florida State's offense and Alabama's defense in this one.
Mm-hmm. Let's jump into our 3 ways Florida State can pull off this crazy upset. It is a crazy upset. Florida State is the underdog here, 13.5. The last time I looked at it, I don't know if it's changed any there with these injuries. I would imagine maybe will fluctuate here as we get closer to Saturday, gentlemen. But let's look at some game notes here first. Let's look at some positives as well. Florida State is 4-2 all-time in season openers against current SEC teams, including, of course, the success that they had against LSU, 45-24 against the Tigers in the 2023 season. We were there for that one. That was like, okay, yeah, this is a real deal team right there. How would you do anything imaginable for that to happen inside Doak Campbell Stadium? But over the past 10 seasons, Florida State's 8 regular season non-conference wins against the SEC are the second in the country. Mike Norvell has 5 wins against the SEC since 2016, the second most non-conference wins against the conference in that span. Now, Florida State, though, fully revamped roster, 49 newcomers for this upcoming season. Can you say that last year's team stunk? And the personnel that they had there, and also to that transfer portal was dookie. Absolutely. 25 new true freshmen and 24 transfers overall. Let's go over and pick each. We all picked one way that Florida State can come away with it. We didn't actually discuss with one another, so who knows? We might be having the same one. Who knows? But we do a pretty good job usually of picking our different ones. Who wants to go first? Do you want me to go first here? Or does anybody want to start off? Because I think VZ is going to give us a good spill on how this upset could happen.
I think you'll be surprised.
Okay. All right. I'll start off first here. And it's kind of the theme for me all throughout the season. It's going to be that way. But more specifically, it's clear cut that it's going to come down to Florida State's defensive line. And I rely more on the inside of the defensive line. Is Darrell Jackson going to take take the next step, but the big step that we all are hoping and expecting? This fan base is hoping. He's a monster of size. There's some photos of him walking into practice today. He just looks different from everyone else, which is also a little bit concerning. But he looks like a mammoth compared to guys like Daniel Lyons and also to KJ Sampson and Jaden Jones. Like this is a unit of a guy. Is Darrell Jackson going to be a game changer for you on Saturday afternoon? Now, behind him is Daniel Lyons. You've got KJ Sampson in there. We'll probably see some of the Desir twins as well. But someone's got to get back there and get to Ty Simpson. Bring pressure, even if it's just that, because you do feel confident what you've got with James Williams off the outside and also to Jason Jenkins. One of my biggest concerns, though, is how many plays is Jason Jenkins going to get out there on the field? They feel confident in what they've got in Jaden Jones, but it's this guy that, just out of nowhere has kind of been a breakout guy for you. He's got to prove it on the field, but you got to get to that backfield with Ty Simpson having his first career start. I think Tony White is going to bring a lot of different looks at him, which I think is going to help this group. I think, for example, we'll see Darrell Jackson off to the outside and then pass rush off to like a defensive end, outside linebacker look. I think you will see Darrell Jackson in that group. If you guys listen to the first press conference with Tony White when he talked about Darrell Jackson, this is, he's a guy that's going to be moving around this whole entire defensive line. So interested to see what that looks like. We'll probably see Jason Jenkins on the inside as well. I think we'll see Earl Little Jr. come help that with some of the blitz packages, even that linebacker room as well. I think a lot of this is going to just have to be proven on Darrell Jackson. If Darrell Jackson has a game, and I'm talking a sack, brings in pressure and everything, that puts Florida State in a strong chance of being able to stay in this game. And like we were mentioning earlier, I have it in my notes here, but Ty Simpson will run the ball. And I don't think he's not easy to bring down. No, there's not a whole lot of film on him, nor has he faced the greatest of talent, not the same talent that Florida State has on this defensive side, because he's facing, second string, third string guys. But he's not an easy guy to take down. He's got some speed. Florida State's going to have to play very smart there with that defensive line unit and stay to their assignments that I know Tony White has put them into. But yeah, this defense, I think, has got to get aggressive. And to be aggressive, it's got to start in the trenches, in my opinion, gentlemen. And they can't play, which I thought last year happened to them. Can't let plays come to them. They've got to go after, and they've got to go after it hard. Heat-seeking missiles, come with physicality, and bring pressure to Alabama's quarterback, who's getting his first start in a hostile environment. And that's all got to start with Darrell Jackson and company and this defensive line.
Yeah, I don't entirely disagree whatsoever. I think the defensive line is going to have really just the front seven in general, or front six, I should say, is going to have a huge impact on this game on both sides of the ball. But especially Florida State, I'm curious to see how these linebackers play in this new scheme with Tony White. Yeah. I'm sure you guys talked about the other day, but it was interesting to see Stephon Thompson not get that starting nod in favor of Juice Cryer and Omar Graham. Gotta love, really, I love that, honestly, because Thompson has the experience in this system. They're going to have a huge impact on this game, and if they're playing at a high level, it's going to go a long way for this game.
Mm-hmm.
Am I just going into my stat? Is Dustin just going to shake his head?
Dustin doesn't think defensive line matters for this game, so we move on.
You guys said it all.
Okay, I guess I'll go into my stat. For Florida State to win this game, they have to win the rushing attack on both sides of the ball. And you can only rely on last year's stats so much, but in all four of their losses for Alabama last year, those were the only 4 games they had under 100 rushing yards. And in 3 of those games, they allowed a quarterback to have success running the football. Diego Pavia had 56 yards for Vanderbilt. Nico Iamaleava, I can't believe I said that right, 44 yards for Tennessee. And then Jackson Arnold went crazy for Oklahoma with 131 yards on the ground. Alabama's going to expect Tommy Castellanos to want to use his legs at some point. The difference is going to be, can Castellanos still have success even when they're prepared for it? And Alabama has had trouble really for as long as I can remember defending quarterbacks who can run the football. When a play breaks down, they can get outside the pocket and make plays for themselves. Alabama knows that, and I know they've worked on it this offseason. They've talked about it. But if Castellanos can still find success, get 50, 60 yards on the ground, that's going to open so many things for this offense that we can't really compare it to last year because there's so many new starters on this offense. But to have success on offense, they're going to have to run with Castellanos, and they're going to have to say, hey, for 3 weeks after this, we're not really playing anybody. Go all out for this game. Dive for an extra yard or 2 if you need to. I think that's going to be what it takes in this game.
Mm-hmm. I agree. Yeah, they're going to have to be very efficient in the trenches. I mean, not just offensively, like you were saying, and defensively as well. And you look at Tony White, that's one thing that he's done extremely well during his time as a defensive coordinator. 25 games during his time as a DC, he's held opponents to under 100 rushing yards. 15 times held the opponent to less than 75 rushing yards. So I think, one thing that Florida State really struggled with last year was their ability to defend that run. I think that's something
only one thing.
Well, they should take a step back in the right direction in that facet under Tony White, and most likely immediately, because, I mean, we've all seen what he's done upon his arrival, not just at Syracuse, but at Nebraska. I mean, last 4 seasons, top 25 defense. There's no reason why Florida State's defense shouldn't be much improved from a year ago. But, mine kind of bleeds into Austin's a little bit, and it's really, can Tommy be Tommy? Because last year at Boston College, Castellanos, I mean, I've said it a bunch of times on this show, he just wasn't in the right system. And Bill O'Brien, instead of trying to use Castellanos to his strengths, he wanted him to play into his own offense. And that didn't work out for either side. We did see the improved passing efficiency, the 18 touchdowns, 5 interceptions, but it was just really, how he fell off a cliff on the ground. And now at Florida State, back with Gus Malzahn, that relationship there, and the guy who recruited him, one of the few coaches to recruit him as a quarterback to UCF. They're very familiar with one another. He's worked in Gus's offense before and knows what he expects from him as a quarterback in that specific system. And, throughout the offseason, we've heard really good things about his fit into this offense. It seems like it's been very, very seamless for the most part. And even recently in camp, Mike Norvell has talked about it. Tommy Castellanos, he hasn't turned the ball over a ton. He's done a pretty good job there. He's made some plays with his arm. Can't really get a ton from the legs in camp just because the quarterbacks aren't live. That's going to be what's so important whenever the bullets start flying on Saturday. But, Florida State, instead of expecting Castellanos to come in and fit their offense, they fit this offense to Tommy Castellanos, and that should rebound him in the right direction. If they're able to combine that rushing strength that he had in 2023, get that with the improved passing efficiency in 2024, this is a guy who could be a weapon for Florida State. And obviously, there's a calendar that's been circled by the Crimson Tide with Castellanos making those comments about Alabama a couple of months ago, and that kind of, leading into the ACC kickoff. We've heard some of those players respond. So there's going to be some energy out there. And, Alabama, we already heard one of their players, LT Overton, talk about how they want to make it so Castellanos doesn't even want to carry the ball by the end of the game on Saturday. So some motivation there going in on both sides. And I think if Castellanos, if he's able to do his thing with his legs, get close to that 100-yard mark, at least over 60, like Austin was saying, that's going to put Florida State in a really good position to pull off an upset here.
Going to 2023's matchup between number 3 Florida State and Thomas Castellanos' Boston College. Florida State squeaked by 31-29. Thomas Castellanos against Florida State's defense, which was the biggest argument for Florida State to make the college football playoff, was because of that defensive play led by Jared Verse and what you knew you had at the linebacker position. Thomas Castellanos had an absolute showing. 20 of 33 on air, 305 yards on the air, and had a touchdown thrown. Also had an interception there, but on the ground, 16 attempts for almost 100 yards with 95 yards. That's probably what you're looking for in this game. I don't think there's much of a concern. He talked trash over the offseason and stuff. That this kid is going to come with confidence and he's going to be ready to play. And not only that, he's going to try to get the rest of his team as well to get to the level that he's at. But this was number 3 ranked Florida State in the country. Not an easy team to face at all. Like I was just saying there, I mean, that defense was an absolute menace. Braden Fisk from the inside, Fabo, Jared Verse, Pat Payton.
Yeah, but that team was also going through some. Wasn't that the game where like the entire team was sick?
That is true.
Yeah. Well, sickness. 305 yards on the air.
Career high.
Yeah. 1,100 yards rushing in 2023 overall for Castellanos. Like you said, D-Lo, got to get the advantage of his wheels, man, in this offense on Saturday afternoon. And it's there. It's there. There's a reason why him and Bill O'Brien did not get along. And, it was shocking to me that he decided to stay in the first place. But once he found out that just wasn't going to work, he had to find a new home, and he reunites with Gus Malzahn, and it's got to be a game where you see Thomas Castellanos. I wouldn't be shocked if he's your leading rusher on Saturday, right, gents?
Yeah, I mean, it wouldn't surprise me at all. And another thing about that game is, I think it was the 3rd game of the season for Florida State, but it was still relatively early in the year. And I mean, we all know what that Florida State defense turned into as the season progressed. But I mean, you can say the same thing about Alabama. Like, this is a very good defense coming into the season, but it's so early. And I mean, sometimes it can take time to get on the same page and really find your rhythm as a defense. And that's why, these early season matchups, that's where an offense like Florida State, they can take advantage of an elite defense.
Mm-hmm. Any extra?
I prepared one more if we need it.
Get you another one. I mean, I've got a handful off the top of my head, but go and throw us one, VZ. What you got?
Florida State's got to force turnovers, and I think the benchmark has to be 2. Alabama had at least 2 turnovers in all 4 of their losses last year, and even the games that they won with more than 2 turnovers. The South Carolina game, which they squeaked by 27-25. The USF game, which was 14-13, I think going into the 4th quarter before Alabama eventually blew it open. And then Auburn, which wasn't exactly A fun game to watch. I think we can leave it at that.
Hmm.
Off the top of your head, do you know when the last time Florida State forced 2 turnovers against an FBS opponent? It doesn't have to be a long
I don't think it was last season. So I guess Louisville.
It was the Pitt game that season. We all think about that Louisville game as a dominant defensive performance, but they only had the 1 interception with Tatum Bethune in the end zone. Otherwise,
it was a big one.
Sacks.
Wow.
Yeah, no, it was, but it was 10 sacks was the reason they won that game defensively. Florida State just really hasn't produced turnovers. Even that year in 2023, as great as that defense was, they were just shutting everything down more than they were forcing turnovers. Tony White's defenses sort of kind of create turnovers. They did have 6 games forcing 2 turnovers last year, but they maxed out at 2. They didn't do anything more than that. I think they've got to get at least 2 in this game, if not 3.
It'd be hard not to improve. Like you said, the struggles have been persistent for Florida State, especially last year. Just 6 total turnovers forced. And I mean, one of those was a fumble recovered on special teams, or really only 5 defensive turnovers in 12 games. That's not ideal.
And 2 of them were against Charleston Southern. So
that's also not ideal.
No bueno.
Tony White, I mean, with that aggressive and physical mentality this Florida State defense should bring, and trying to create more negative plays and havoc, that should hopefully lead to more turnovers.
Mm-hmm. One of mine, extra one here, is the matchup between Jerry Wilson, Florida State's new starting cornerback, and Ryan Williams. And not even Ryan Williams, but I mean, Alabama's wide receiver corps is special. Mike Norvell made sure to give a lot of love to them, and more respect than anything today and the presser. But, Jabril Rawls is going to have a big time game on his hand, not having a whole ton of college experience as well, being a redshirt sophomore. But Jeremy Bernard, 50 receptions last year for the Crimson Tide over Ryan Williams, had the most receptions for them, had 794 yards as well. But, I'm looking at this wide receiver course for Alabama, and then I look over at Florida State's, Jerry, I think everybody feels very confident in this man. I mean, that this guy is bringing tenacity, and he's proven it that he was one of the top guys in the transfer portal with his talents. And he's proven that he can compete, but got to see what Jabril Rawls can do, and what that secondary overall is going to be able to combat something. Definitely, if Ty Simpson's able to start connecting with these guys, it's a new scheme to understand. It's going to be, I couldn't imagine what the film room looks for these guys having to study and understand where their assignments are going to be in zone and such, as we'll see in this new defense. But man, communication and physical play and just being smart and where you need to be is going to be huge for these 2 cornerbacks in the secondary overall, to me, guys. And Ryan Williams, that's a special, very, very special talent, first round guy, and they got their work cut out for them Saturday, guys.
I mean, Bernard's another projected first rounder. I was just reading a mock draft either yesterday or the day before, and he was going at the end of the first round. And they've got 2 talented guys out there.
It's ridiculous.
And Ryan Williams, I mean, he's someone I'm really excited to see in person there in Doak on Saturday. And like you guys have said, that Alabama wide receiver room, they're kind of loaded there. Ryan Williams, Bernard, like you guys said, who followed DeBoer over from Washington and was there last year. Brought in Isaiah Horton from Miami this offseason. He's probably going to be a starter for him. He had 56 catches for 616 yards and 5 touchdowns last season. Brings some good size to the table at 6'4". 208. I don't think their tight ends are bad receivers either. They got 2 guys who could make an impact there. So this passing attack, if it does start getting going behind the arm of Ty Simpson, he's going to have to prove himself early on. I'm sure Florida State is going to test him and see if he's able to pass it or not. That could be a problem for FSU, considering the inexperience in that defensive backfield, and not only at corner, but you're breaking in some new starters there at safety as well. How are those guys like Earl Little Jr., Edwin Joseph, Ashlyn Barker? We're going to see a lot of KJ Kirkland out there, probably some Shaheem Brown as well, though he's been a little bit lower on the pecking chart during the preseason. It's a massive test for the secondary, and we've talked all offseason about how there's not a ton of experience there. Well, hey, we're going to learn real quick if these guys are up for the challenge or not.
Mm-hmm. Well, I'm going to go ahead and say it right here too. I mean, it would have been mine immediately off the bat, but I wanted to get little tiny bit creative with it. But offensive line.
Yeah.
let's just put it right here. Everybody listening, if you have kids or if you're on the TV or if you're making dinner right now or if you're listening to the podcast or whatever, make sure you go ahead and mute it or tone it down just for like 3 seconds. But on Saturday afternoon, Herb Hand's unit is going to have to move some motherfuckers. That's just what's going to have to happen. If they don't move any mother effers, then this is going to be an ugly game. You're going to have to rely on Thomas Castellanos to throw the ball. That's not exactly what you want to do. I know I just noted that he threw 300-plus yards against FSU in 2023, but still, I don't want to rely on Thomas Castellanos to be throwing the ball for me. I don't want, he's going to scramble. We know that. But, I got to make holes. And, we'll see if Herb Hand has been able to revamp this room. They haven't had a whole ton of time to build that chemistry, relying heavily on the fall camp. Didn't have time in the spring to do so. But got to make room for, they feel highly on Roydell Williams. I know all of us on here are a little questionable on what we're going to get out of Roydell off of, last year. And, it's hard to grade about anybody from last year. But, he's someone to us on here. He's got to prove it. And, let's see what Gavin Sawchuk has still left in the tank there coming from Oklahoma. But I think we're kind of licking our chops at what you could see out of the true freshman in number 32. James Wilder Jr.'s number with Ousmane Kroma. I think we're going to see a good bit of the true freshman. I don't think you won't see a whole ton, but you'll see a good bit from him as well, just because you need someone to play with physicality that just wants to go after you instead of just allowing people to come after him. That's the tenacity that you're going to want. I think that's going to be an early signal to us that Ousmane Kroma is your future starter at running back, but you got to move people up front. If they don't move anybody, it's going to be a long afternoon and Doak.
Yeah, nothing's getting started for this Florida State offensive line without having some success there at the point of attack. And, you kind of went over it, Logan. They've got some experience at their previous institutions. They just don't have a lot of chemistry and experience playing alongside one another due to that practice time lost by injuries. So it's going to be really interesting to see, if they're able to come out and they're on the same page on these opening script drives, or if it takes a little bit for them to get going and really figure things out. And like we've talked about, you can't really afford to start slow against this Alabama team, against this Alabama defense that is bringing back, a lot of experience there. So it's going to be a really interesting test, like we've talked about for multiple positions across this roster. When you go into this game against Alabama, as soon as that ball kicks off, if you're not ready to go, they're going to punch you right there in the mouth.
Mm-hmm. I mean, the good thing is both of your starting tackles have starting experience against Alabama with Gunnar Hansen and Micah Pettis. So they're at least somewhat used to it. I will follow the running backs up with this question. The leading rusher for Florida State, how many carries do you think they get in this game? Because I think this is going to be a by committee group, and I would set the over-under at like 11.
Yeah, if we're not including Tommy.
Yeah,
I would have him almost competing for that number one spot there. But yeah, I mean, if it does end up being that case, I think they'll believe in Roydell early because of the experience that he has, and then Gavin Sawchuk as well. But yeah, it's going to be a lot of committee run, which is a difference, definitely different than what Gus had previously with RJ Harvey, who I think is going to be an absolute stud for the Denver Broncos, and Sean Payton up there. But yeah, I mean, that's my take on it right there.
They're going to run the ball. I mean, if they have a guy who is starting to figure out and get into a rhythm, it wouldn't surprise me if, someone ends up in that running back room in that 10 to 13 carry range for sure.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, let's go ahead and do it then, ladies and gentlemen. Let's get our score predictions in. If you're here with us in the chat, throw down your score predictions to Florida State versus Alabama, which Alabama, if you guys didn't know this, they're on a 23 consecutive streak of winning their season openers. This is also their first time traveling into Tallahassee. But Florida State will face off against number 8 Alabama in this season opener. The dog is excited at D-Lou's house. This is what we love to see. This is some good energy all across. Tallahassee's getting riled up. I'm looking forward to being up there, traveling up tomorrow and into College Town, enjoying the environment and the weather as well. But 3:30 kickoff on ABC, afternoon prime time. I'm just ready for some college football being back. I know we had some in week 0, ugly game there in Dublin. hated having flashbacks of that game. It was tough to watch.
It was the same score too. It was like
Yeah.
just like you're just sitting there like, not again.
Really?
they called that touchdown back at the end. I saw the score. I'm like, we cannot do this, guys. Please just put points on the board, please.
No, absolutely not. But man, we got a great slate of college football all across the country. But more specifically, though, we'll be there in Tallahassee for this one. Score prediction times. I guess I get to go first, and we'll start this rotation going out throughout the rest of the season. Then we'll just go VZ and D-Lou and wrap it back around as we move forward. But here we go. I know we had our record predictions go out last week. And, you know, a lot of us have a lot of question marks, as I think everybody does. And this is what, you know, Mike Norvell has sort of done to himself. You know, what is Mike going to show up and look like with this team on Saturday afternoon, and the way that he's coaching, the way that he is maneuvering around on the sidelines, I think is going to be really intriguing to me as well. But what has he done this offseason to go back to what we knew Mike was doing well in 2023 and finding that success and seeing that climb that he has been talking about heavily? Alabama lost Jalen Milroe. You know, he ran a lot too on the ground as well. 726 yards, 20 touchdowns as well. They also lost Jihad Campbell, one of the top tier talents in this last year's draft, who's now with the Eagles, but he led their team with 119 tackles last year and 5 sacks. But like I mentioned earlier, I think there's going to be a fun matchup between Jerry Wilson and also Ryan Williams. Who wants to play football? Who wants to play smash mouth football? I want to say Florida State is going to do that. And I do think they are going to come with that mentality, which is going to be a great different sign than what we saw last year. But I think at the end of the day, their too deep is just not there yet. And it's going to be hard to do so. I think you see that better whenever they face off in Tuscaloosa next year for that. You get a lot more opportunities with your too deep. But as of right now for this, you know, and then barring injuries as well, it's just, it's a tough one. It's not going to be easy. I've got Florida State losing this game 27-17. So they actually cut into that spread there a little bit as D-Lou's smiling.
I know what that reaction is.
Smiling at me. Well, we'll see what Dustin's prediction is there, but I got 27-17 Crimson Tide.
Yeah. What was the stat you mentioned about Florida State again? Or it was Florida State.
Alabama?
Well, just the opening games. Was it 4-2 against the
consecutive?
No. Was it the 4-2 stat? Was it Florida State's 4-2 against the SEC?
Yeah, Florida State is 4-2 all time in season openers against current SEC teams.
Well, I was at one of those losses, and it was against this team in Atlanta. In 2017, I'm still mad about that missed pass interference in the end zone.
Yes, Nooney, man, where's the pass interference, man? What the hell?
That game would have been so much different if that was correctly called. But you know, that was 8 years ago. I digress. I've been very vocal that I don't think this Florida State team is that talented, and as Logan just mentioned, there's a lot to be desired in the too deep, and I think it's going to show its ugly head on Saturday. I really think it is. Even with the weather kind of being up in the air, maybe it's kind of rainy, kind of sloppy. I even think Florida State comes out and scores on the first 2 possessions. Maybe it's a touchdown and a field goal, but I think they only score once the rest of the game. I just think it's going to be one of those games where once they get off script, it's going to be hard for them to keep up on offense. And I do not trust the passing attack right now if they fall behind. We just talked about it 30 minutes ago where, yeah, and Square White has a lot of production. Deuce Robinson, you think, can be that guy, but there's just not production out there. There's nothing to really rely on if you fall behind by 2 possessions and you need to come up with a late drive. I don't think it's going to get to that point. I think this is actually going to be kind of ugly, and a lot of Florida State fans are going to be mad at me about that. But I don't think this is going to be a close game. I've got Alabama winning 30-13.
30-13. That's a rough one there. That's tough.
Don't want to see that.
No, you don't want to see that, guys. You don't want to see that. Well, maybe Dustin can change the game here. Pull off a shocker.
But, you know, at the same time, it's just hard to project this Florida State team. I mean, so much is different. You do have some guys come back from last year, but just so many new faces. What exactly is going to look like in game action? And they're going up against a really talented team. in their first game of the season before they've had a chance, to really see what it looks like out there on a game day. It's a tough team to open up a season with, and it's just hard to bet against this Alabama Crimson Tide defense, man. Like I've talked about Ty Simpson and his inexperience, and only 50 passes, no touchdowns over his time at Alabama. But then you look over at the other side of the ball, and it's like, man, that's a proven unit over there. 10 players on defense returning that saw 400 or more snaps in 2024. 8 of their top 10 tacklers are back from a season ago. 3 players back with 7+ tackles for loss. They've got 7 back with at least 1 interception, 5 who had 2+ interceptions. So it's a very productive defense. They've added a couple guys in there as well. And I think that's really going to be the difference in this game, is that Crimson Tide defense. And I smiled because we don't talk about our score predictions before this show, but somehow me and Logan end up picking the same one more often than not. I'm also
it happens way too often.
Yeah, we literally didn't talk about it, but I've also got Alabama 27, Florida State 17. I do think this one's going to be close throughout, and then the Crimson Tide pull away there at the end.
Okay. Now let's talk about 27-17. How do you feel coming out of that? Because that's close. That's closer than what the spread had. That's then 10 points. Do you leave the game with some confidence? There's got to be some good things coming from it, so you can build off of that, obviously. But what is your perception of what maybe this team is to you moving forward? What does that kind of give you? I mean, it kind of shows me, hey, that this team can fight. They've shown better signs, certainly a whole 180 different of signs than last season. What does the direction kind of take you mentally with this team moving forward?
Yeah, I think you're seeing a team, if it does end like this, where Florida State able to keep it closely contested throughout and then does fall to Alabama instead of just being flat out, blown out on the table, shows that, you got a lot more fight, a lot more willpower. And even though this team, they're facing a tough opponent, they're not going to give up in the heat of battle. And that was something you saw too often last year. Whenever you face adversity, you had guys drop your heads, and it just kind of spin-balled from there for Florida State, and they were never able to get back on the right track. So I think the biggest thing is, if there is some moment in the game, whether Alabama scores a long touchdown against Florida State on the busted coverage, or you throw an interception, you lose a fumble, how do you respond the next chance you're out there? Is it going to be positive, or is it going to be negative? Because that's too much of what we saw in 2024 for Florida State.
Mm-hmm.
Good teams win, great teams cover. I think 10 points, you'd be okay. It depends how, like in that 27-17 example, how do we get there? Is it, does Alabama get a late touchdown to go up 10 to win 27-17, or do they roar out to a 24-0 lead and then kind of just let off the gas? That's going to depend. That's really going to depend on my feelings as much as anything. I really don't know how to predict how I'll feel after this game, especially because my expectations are so low. But I feel like a 10-point loss, as crazy as it is to say, I wouldn't be too terribly upset with it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and you go on to the next couple weeks. You have a cupcake game. You have 2 cupcake games, and then you go on the road to begin ACC play
plus a bye week. Plus a bye week, so you get 3 weeks to kind of mentally reset from it.
Yeah, the tough thing about last year too is you start out the season obviously with a loss, and Florida State fans and that whole entire staff, Mike Norvell was completely shocked by that, to go lose to Georgia Tech, and Georgia Tech ended up being a pretty competitive team throughout the rest of the season as well, going into battle at the end of the season with Georgia, which was an insane finish. But it just completely kind of shot that team, really. And that's one thing, if Florida State does lose this game, you don't want to see that happen again. And I think you have enough leaders now, and Florida State did a good job of doing that through the transfer portal, to come in and immediately be those guys. And Thomas Castellanos is a very vocal leader as well. Deuce Robinson has been representing the Noles very well since he's arrived in Tallahassee. Like, you've got guys that will step up and try to set the tone and try to build accountability as well. But you just don't want to see that where it kind of ruins your momentum there for FSU. Did the power almost go out there in Tallahassee for you, Dustin? Because I just saw
power just flicker. That's not a good sign.
Uh-oh. Well, I think that is going to do it for our instant reaction. If you're still here with us, or not our instant reaction, this is actually our preview to the game. The game has not happened yet. Just putting it out there. It has not happened. We still got a couple more days before it begins. But what I was alluding to, me and VZ will be live for an instant reaction on Saturday. about that time. It'll be evening time. But we will see you then. If you're here on YouTube, smack the like button down below. Hit that subscribe button if you will. We appreciate y'all watching all throughout the off season. It's been a pleasure with you guys. We had quite a bit of a thrill of a roller coaster ride. But man, it is going to be feeling pretty damn good to get back to Doak Campbell Stadium and check out these new renovations. I'll be in the stands, be waving up to you, D-Lou. And then we'll definitely probably have a beverage in my hand as well, since they don't got those in the press box. So
water, you mean? Yeah.
I got to take on the full fan experience. What are you talking about?
Just don't make it like the Florida instant reaction.
No,
that's all I ask.
That season was shot for me. I was like, F it. Let's just get off what I need to get off on my chest.
It's a sloppy season. Between that and the Miami reaction, we're just in there drinking the beer while doing the show. I mean,
that's just what that season did to us, man. It was back to the Willie Taggart days, man, when I was drinking Natty Ice. Not even Natty Light, but I was drinking Natty Ice. That's what Willie
shout
did
out
to me.
Logan's old Natty Ice
yeah,
wall.
Shout out to the Natty Wall.
If you've been with us that long, thank you. And why?
I know, yes. Appreciate y'all. Thank you guys so much. We will talk to you guys on Saturday evening. Me, VZ, and I. FSU versus Alabama. Instant reaction. Y'all have a great rest of y'all's week and safe travels up to the 850. Peace.